All right. Well, I almost didn't make it today. Down here in Atlanta, Georgia, where I am located, I guess one could say that it was a dark and stormy night. There's, I thought a lot about my book and the meaning in it. I'm still thinking about it. So maybe it would not do for me to publish all of the text, or even a majority of the text, here for free on by text to speech. So I have a couple of chapters in various places that are samples of the text. I might speak a little bit about the ideas that were behind the writing of it. But I think I need to be a little bit careful and protective of the intellectual property, my intellectual property, before the book appears on Apple Books. I'm working on that problem also. I may have a solution. I don't know. It's a difficult situation, but we shall see. I have to time it because I'm still finding things to work on and correct in the text. And I want to, since I was in an unforeseen manner, for unknown reasons, given such a long time to finish writing the chapters, it is a 1,000-page book. And to polish it up, I think I need to make sure that when the book suddenly appears, that it is ready, and there are as few distractions in the text as possible. So that is what I am. That is the last phase of editing. And that's what I'm working on. It's 1,000 pages. I've read through all of the separate sections of the book multiple times. Even after I update update the bookstore version with revisions, I go back and I read multiple sections several times. The book is going to appear as though it wasn't written all at one time. That's not a fault, in my opinion. That's how I designed the book. It, in fact, was not written all at one time. There were, in the beginning, all the way up until midsummer, I would have to say, there were long breaks in which I worked on other projects and had to deal with life. It can be difficult to complete writing something because when you're not trained as a professional writer, it takes more time. And that's what I found. It took me more time because I'm not trained as a professional writer. I do have writing experience. I have published scientific articles, as I stated before, but fiction writing, extemporaneous writing, I have no training for that. I hope you enjoy the book anyway. It is 1,000 pages. Um, it is being sold right now. The suggested price for below the price that I suggested for. Right now, Apple, I believe, the last time I checked, it could have changed. Hopefully, it will change. I've polished it up. It contains multimedia content, a lot of it. It has short sections written in other languages. I include references to some important cinematic material that everybody will recognize. I reference music pieces. In my heart, I feel that this is at least a $25 book. It's frustrating for me to see that the reviewers at Apple, whatever their process is, think of it as a $10 book, a $9 to $10 book. I don't agree, but they set the price. I do want a lot of people to read it in different countries. So maybe intermediate price, something that values my need to maximize profit, this being my first book, and me having, I'm self-employed right now as a writer, and this is my first book. So, yes, there is a need for me to both spread my book to as many people as possible, but to also make money. There should be a balance there. Maybe $25 limits the market, but maybe $10 isn't quite fair either. What do you all think about that? there's also the matter of artwork in the book. I have some artwork that is decent. This book can do two things at once. It can do a lot of things at once. It can be produced, it can go and become a major cinema release. It can also, at the same time, become a graphic novel. All I have to do is either learn how to draw characters. I used to be able to draw. There was one time, I guess I should say, long ago when I was in high school, when I was able to draw with some skill wired people. I'm out of practice. I'm way out of practice, and it does take a lot of practice. Artists make graphic artists, artists who draw, artists who have skill can sit down and sketch somebody's face in a very realistic manner and make it look simple. That's because most artists these days, most people who do work for comic books, who work for other things, for commercials, so on and so forth, most of them went to school and studied for some years in a formal setting to learn how they do what they do. So yes, they will make it look easy, but it's not. You have to not only learn what details you need to pay attention to when you are trying to make a realistic cartoon image of a person or an object, or even uh, a portrait type thing. And it has to get to the point where drawing specific kinds of shapes are natural. It's reflex. Tracing a circle, for example, making basic shapes, squares, triangles, circles, lines of different kinds of curves in them, with a steady hand, all in one stroke. It's harder than it looks. It takes practice. I need to sell this book now, and then later add detail art if it's going to be added by my own hand. Or if I make enough money to contract an artist who has experience or would like experience illustrating a graphic novel, which requires a whole lot of work from you because of the nature of a graphic novel, the format of a graphic novel. My book is written as a novel. A graphic novel is a lot of graphics with the text, mostly conversation, written on the side, along the margin, or in conversation bubbles. So that is not on the radar right now. I want a cinematic. You've got to find your own voice. About using my own voice. Remember, your biometric information. You own that. These videos that we post on YouTube, we're copyright protected. Remember that. But that doesn't stop anybody really from copying the material. Does it? No. It prevents them from selling it legally. But for all practical purposes, when somebody buys a book from iTunes or Apple Books, as long as they're not selling it, they can do a lot with that book. And I'm not saying just legally they can do a lot with that book. They can do a lot with the book, inside or outside of the law, as long as they're not selling it, right? Selling it draws attention. So there are reasons why people want to have a small footprint in multimedia on the internet, which is what I have right now. It's very limited. I'm seeing in limited circumstances doing writing, working, riding a bike, talking, so on and so forth. There's a lot of background noise. And on this video, possibly, you can't even hear me because the mic fell on the floor. I'm not in a studio setting. This is not a clean voice sample because I'm speaking in my presentation voice, for one, and secondly, there's a loud fan sitting right next to the computer, which the microphone is probably picking up. Be careful about the formats that you release your biometric data in. There are very few people who need to have, if you are a person who has significant business, unless you are a politician, there are a few people who need to have copies of clean biometric data. Think about it this way. In the new computers that Microsoft, and I believe now Apple, they're cellular phones that use your face to log in. For Apple, the computers for Apple and Microsoft that use your face to log in. That's not the same face data that's entered into their Photos programs. The Photos programs, to my knowledge, are not three-dimensional images. The face data collected by Apple and Microsoft and stored exclusively on your computer on the encrypted firmware, hardware and firmware that is on your computer. We are told, and we have people, the public has every reason to believe that it is true, that it does not move from your computer. In fact, I have experience with having some unfortunate resets of my operating system that I have had to undergo. And even when you make certain changes that normally do not require a reset, if that data is perturbed, you are required to reinstall the entire operating system as though it was new. And it wipes out your biometric data because some things that bother your computer are viewed as quite invasive cyber attacks. And the computer, the operating system, acts to protect your biometric data. So be very careful about the type of biometric data, personal data that you put on the internet. It's not as bad as publishing your credit card number with the pins associated with it on the internet, but there are people out there who will steal anything. So be careful. So what am I saying with that? Where is that going? What I am saying is I'm not a voice actor. I don't know that business. I don't know how those contracts work, and I do not know how people protect their intellectual property and their biometric data that are the same when a person is a voice actor or even a standard actor. So I was tempted to do the reading and recording myself, but I do not know enough about the industry to be able to protect myself sufficiently. So that is why what I have in the book is very limited. And as you can hear, maybe in the background, someone else, a well-known actress from Game of Thrones, concurs. Never steal someone else's career. Never steal someone else's material. Give attributions to those whose material you borrow from, which I have tried to do in my book. Why am I worried about such things? Well, because one of my computers was just mysteriously deactivated. I do not know why. It is problematic for me. I saved everything and backed up everything on that computer. I have it saved externally. When the computer started to die over a year ago, I started making sure that I had copies of various things backed up. I have copies. Backed up. And I find that for some reason, my book is held and held while people have access to my computer. And I'm wondering why. Why? Is somebody hacking my computer, breaking into it, and then destroying my easy access to the data? I wonder about that. The two manuscripts right now are the only private property that I have that are possibly of great value. And I use the computers to access what I submit online and to work on the material. So why? My computer's slowly dying when they should not be. They sit in my room all day, and I work. So I'm worried about what someone may or may not be doing. And my friends, it's not a matter of just knowing the lines. Anybody, any fool can find a copy of something that someone else may have taken or obtained and use it for something. Backdate a book. Anyone can do that. And then claim that they were the first ones to write it, and that your original copy, original work, is the copy, the fake. Know your lines. I aced that. I rocked it. And remember, someone's trying to see if I know the lines. Possibly, but no one has asked me a question. Know your lines. There's a reason why I don't generate or I don't speak of all of my thoughts that went into making the characters. I speak about enough to sell the book, not reverse engineer the book. The book is not a history. It does not run through segments of my life in any kind of order. That's not what it was meant to do. Yes, my experiences color the book here and there, of course, as it does in anybody's writing or work. But I do not in detail cover anything really that has happened in my life. I have read titles and abstracts of some fictions that are similar to mine, but I've never read those books that could possibly be considered related to or similar to mine, but I have not read those books. I have a printed record of copies of my book, and those can be used to confirm that I'm the original author and that the concepts and the characters are mine. And I'm finding that there is something going on with the banks here. That's weird. I'm trying to open a bank account, and I'm doing that. But in the interim, I'm thinking about what is going on with some things and some stuff. I'm in an environment in which odd things are happening to my computers. My reflex is to say that I am not going to use banks in this country until that electronic interference stops. At least not use them for my major source of income, which would be my book. And all it just worries me to no end. And that people have interfered with my book that is just a lot of fun. It really is. The book is almost done. And some bozo with a perfect memory might front up and say, "Oh, I wrote that because I memorized every line in the book." When they are asked direct questions, and perhaps I am asked no questions at all.
Cheers. Thank you. So beautiful to see you. And I hope to see you.
That's right. I have been asked no questions at all. I have had no contact or communications. Not a single cell phone call. Okay. There we go.
So start the charity, and I knew there was a moment where I wasn't going to ever say what actually happened because I just didn't feel great enough, and I didn't really feel like it's a celebrity sort of story at the end of the day. But I then realised that I can't start a charity for brain injury without people being like pretty specific.
The book is dedicated to an Amelia Clark. The dedication of the book would be, if I knew her, if I met her, it would be a nice birthday present. Or a nice present for another event. A guy can dream, right? The ownership of the book is not gifted or transferred to me. The ownership of the intellectual property I'm looking to, when I'm able to, have a contract for various forms of collaborations with people to promote and develop these ideas that I have written down and I'm attempting to publish. But the intellectual property will always remain mine.
So that's a shocking thing to happen because we already don't get a lot of So we started an online clinic whereby people could still get the care they needed. And it kicked off in this beautiful way. And all of these wonderful things have come out of it. And it's become something that we're desperately trying to get the funds to make it long lasting and to have forever and ever and ever.
That's another reason why I kind of want to go to the UK to establish connections to work, to get my works developed and produced. 1,000 pages is a long book. That's at least 2 movies worth of material. 2 major movies worth of material. It could possibly be more. It is probably more accurate to say that once somebody takes a book and converts it into a graphic novel, the length of that graphic novel is more reflective of the length of a putative movie that is based on the original text. Because the graphic novel is basically all of the scenes that would potentially go into a movie, and all of the lines that would potentially go into a movie. And all of that is, as I said before, why, and I'm going to repeat myself now, I apologize, why this first publication is so important to me. Because it takes resources to fly across the ocean. It takes resources to buy a house, to pay taxes on the house, utilities on the house, upkeep on the house. It takes resources and money to do all of that. And it takes resources and money to be able to sit in an office and write and purchase research materials. Yes, that takes money. Yes, it has to come from someplace. If not from a contract with a publishing company, then from one's own pockets. Yes, unless one is an expert in a specific topic. And in my book, I cover several topics and areas to the extent that I am competent to cover them. It is a science fiction, so there's a lot of that I can just fudge through. But I would have preferred to have had the resources to speak with experts just to get the jargon and lingo down just right so that people would be able to relate to the characters a lot better. Now, these wouldn't all be high-paid professors and government figures and all of that. A lot of the people who are in my books are just military persons, corporals, sergeants, lieutenants. And there's a suggested consultation fee to pay to people who you sit down and speak with when you research a book, when you perform research for a book. That money has to come from somewhere, but it makes for better writing. You don't unless you're writing some sort of biographic or whatever, you don't publish portions of these people's experiences or lives. For me, for example, I would sit down with portions of my writing and I would say, okay, this, please sign this confidentiality agreement. All right, signed. This is the rate that we're agreed to pay you for this. And now I'd like to ask you, this is a conversation between two people who are in your military department or a similar one. This is what they're talking about. These 3 lines is the description of the topic that they are talking about and what they're getting ready to do or what they are doing. These are the lines. Please read these lines and think about, if you understand what the topic is, think about how you or your colleagues would say this and what kind of changes would you make. And you pay them directly for their thoughts on that. It's called consultation. And that's a specific kind of agreement. There is transfer of intellectual property from the consultant to you. There are other kinds of consultations, but that is the basic one. You pay them at a fair rate, and they no longer own that information that they give to you. You take that information and you incorporate it. Now, direct publication of somebody's words is a bit different. Stay away from that. Apply the standard rules that you would apply that are common sense to people who have had to turn in a homework assignment at the high school or university level. Cite the source if you're going to use a direct quote, word for word. If you're with a consultant and that consultant says something that you want to use directly, if it's a few words, it may not be important. But if it's an entire paragraph or a page or a chapter of a book, that is different. Be careful with that. And make sure that the people who are using as consultants know that there is an agreement and agree to the terms of a contract that they receive a copy of. Don't abuse your friends, because no one knows about what is going to happen tomorrow. It's your work, right? Your name is going on it. Unless you are going to use various people as co-authors, be very careful. And about the source of material, we all have life experiences. If you're going to write an autobiography or a biography, say that it is an autobiography or a biography. And once you do that, once you make and do announce your book before you publish it, or at least try to, once you make that public announcement of what the book is going to be about, that puts everybody on notice who knows you. Okay? I have not written a biography, a historic biography, or a fictional biography. I have not done that. I have stayed away from that because, well, the people in my life are private people. So I have not written about them. The experiences that I have written about, the details of conversations and the way people react to things, you can look at that and say this could have come from any random experience that Asa has ever had. It's just conversation. They're realistic. It's not strained. I haven't written about people close to me or far from me who I know or know. Be careful with that also. Maybe you might feel desperate and need the money or something, and you feel that that is the only material that you have. If you're a creative person, that's not so. You can very easily find a way to write in a general way about any topic without encroaching on somebody else's right to privacy. There are a million ways to do that without ever writing about any exchange that you have ever had with any person. And here is a thing, if you are human and you have had human experiences that are both easy and simple, any of the people who know you can read a book and perhaps find a character or phrase or something like that maybe they have exchanged with you. It's not going to be, I'm not talking about whole pages worth of material. I'm talking about a phrase or a general circumstance that almost anyone could have experienced. And they can say, I experienced something like that when I knew this person. Some random person can say, well, I didn't know this person and I experienced a circumstance like that. General, common types of experiences that are not specific to any one relationship that you have had with anyone. Unless that is your thing, unless you are going for addressing controversy, and you really want to make the people standing next to you, who have stood next to you, who know you, uneasy, then don't be careful with that. I wrote a fiction, and I stuck to the fiction, and I took it off of the planet in order to avoid offending people who I know. Because I'm a new writer. And I do not have extensive experience studying other things that people generally like to hear about, like philosophy and history and all of these other things. I'm a fan of those topics, but I'm not an expert in them. So I wrote about something that I enjoyed during my entire life, science fiction. It is recommended, and there's a specific term for this, that when you publish a summary and a sample to a publisher or a producer, that you hand to them a reference sheet. And it's, when they say reference sheet, they maybe mean somewhere between 3, and usually I think it's 5 or so titles and authors that are similar to the genre that are in the same genre that you are writing in, and have, I won't say similar, comparable subject matter, In other words, they're looking for authors who influenced you, who influenced your writing. Authors who influenced your writing. I list them directly. I list them already directly in my text. In a different recording, I said, sometimes I refer to them in a joking manner. Sometimes it's only a half joking manner. Sometimes it's part of the plot where I make a specific reference to a specific work. I'm a fan of science fiction. I've read science fiction. I've read science fiction during my entire life. There is no getting around the fact that my significant major influences come from people like George Lucas, Leonard Nimoy, Star Trek, Star Wars. And other more recent cinematic releases that were also influenced by Star Trek, Star Wars, Battlestar Galactica, etc., etc. I already have those references directly in my book in a semi-scholarly apparatus known as the footnotes. When you write your first copy, when you write your first work, and if you are unfortunate enough to have to write it independently, make sure you footnote everything, because that makes your work interesting. When people know how you were thinking about certain things, not everything, but certain things, or what was on your mind when you wrote something, not everything, but certain things. And I don't footnote everything, by the way. I'm sorry. I exaggerated that statement. When there is a specific cultural reference that I am aware of, and it is significant to the work, I make a footnote. It's also a check, because my understanding is one thing. What I am able to find on the internet is usually the same as my understanding of it. Sometimes it's different. It's a quality control check. You may be right, what you find on the internet may be wrong, and vice versa. Look for a second and third source if that is the case. You still may be right, and all of the 2 and 3 sources that agree with each other may be wrong. And those are the free internet sources that you have to be careful with, because often they're correct, sometimes they're wrong, or sometimes they're only slightly wrong. That last point is important. I am writing my book, my science fiction, with the benefit of only certain material that is inexpensive, that I can verify. Music. It's relatively inexpensive. And it's there for sale for a few dollars or less, right? Major artists such as the Beatles, they will allow you to listen to less than studio quality, and sometimes for the very old material, studio quality material, and sometimes studio quality material that was not immediately or is just now being placed on what are they called, remastered material. That stuff, that's gold mine.
as long as you reference them, give them credit for everything, and don't include a copy of their material in your work, but you reference their website where a person can listen to their music in a controlled and regulated manner. They love that. Artists love that. That's why they put their material on the internet. It's not so that you can rip it off without paying for a quality copy of the material or even a complete copy that is slightly degraded. No, it's so that they can interest you in what they think is important and what other people think is important, and interest you in buying their polished product for a fair price. What I have done is I've included, there's a video of me and links to artists. Some of them well known, some of them are not well known. I hopefully supported, sent business to some less well-known musicians. Of course, there is my muse, who is all over the place in the book, right? But there are also links to major and minor artists. There are even links to producers of clothing and fashion. I'm inside writing. I'm inside writing. And when I see a collection of something like clothing that I think is nice, essentially what I have done is I've said thank you to the producers of that work by putting a link in my book, not just a random link, but even writing their name into the plot and including a link to their website or the material that they published on YouTube. Thank you for planting those flowers there in that very aesthetic way that brought a little sunshine into my life for free. I appreciated it enough to want to share that with people who read my book. And I have tried to do it in a way that works. I don't have, the soft drink commercial in the middle of my writing, but I don't even have that in the commercial break that I wrote. That's in the book. But on that note, on the business aspect of things, I hope that the examples of free business that I have given to some well-known and less well-known artists and fashion designers serves as a example of potential for advertising in a tasteful manner for certain kinds of products. If I am lucky enough to have my manuscript selected for development for cinematic material, and also my perhaps potential to be developed as a writer, not only of screenplays and cinematic releases, but of other things that writers make a fair amount of money or a lot of money writing commercials, even specific lines in commercials that other people have mostly developed. I listened to the film festivals that went on in London and around London. And there are writers who are hired to rewrite the lines of specific characters in cinematic releases. Usually, the rewrites, the people who do the rewrites, the writers, sign confidentiality agreements because that is a touchy matter. For many reasons. You might imagine what would have happened if someone like Leonardo da Vinci or Michelangelo found that one day something major that they were very proud of and was posted someplace was significantly altered.
Okay, good.
So, Marisa, you're back.
Break their hearts,
I'm a
right?
bit nervous about it.
Possibly make them angry.
What songs are winning right now in the
So yeah, sometimes rewrites happen.
Okay.
Why do we
It's a
get?
touchy circumstance.
Mine is I'll make a man
And
out
it,
of you from
it
Mulan.
appears to be a very covered by confidentiality agreements.
Oh, right.
The writers make a lot of money writing for
Okay, then I can do
various
that.
things
That's
and
okay.
doing various
I mean, I
things.
can't,
Speech
but-
writing,
Okay.
well
I was
known,
hoping Frank
and that's
Sinatra
a
would
very
win.
specific skill.
Oh, you can do Frank Sinatra. Frank Sinatra.
You're doing Mulan.
Yes. Frank Sinatra does Milan. I
Yeah,
like that.
that's good.
But
Amazing.
other
Just say
things
good luck today. Thank you. You too.
for
Ah.
movies
Fellow
and
human?
fictional
Amelia, what
fiction
Hogwarts
production
house are you?
Well, I mean,
of certain kinds. Sometimes it's a matter of
sometimes I'm like, I'm just
being
Hufflepuff, really, aren't I?
being placed
Why do you
to
say
have an
that?
opportunity.
I don't know.
You're doing
Because I'm
something
brave.
else,
I am
somebody
brave
writes it
and
and you say,
courageous.
I like the way you
But
said that.
sometimes I feel like the
Sometimes it can
majority
be a
of
real
where
help.
I live
I
in
have
my
to
day
be
is like
Can you
Hufflepuff.
Apparently I'm a
Don't be
Ravenclaw.
tell me what you
Huh?
can do with
Apparently I'm a
You're
Ravenclaw.
this?
Ooh, you're very clever.
Well, they say
That's-
that.
that's what I
fine
know.
That's how I know it's all bullshit.
Yeah. What? No, you're
For
obviously
this.
very clever. Look at what you've
But
done.
it's not the way I
Look at
like
this
it.
praise
Can
I'm
you
heaping on him here.
do something with it?
Please keep.
Just you could be a Ravenclaw.
That's
You
the
could be a
impression that I
Ravenclaw.
got.
You could be a Ravenclaw.
That some writers make a lot of money. off of
Majestic
that
Moose
kind of
donated
thing.
$1,000.
Majestic Moose.
You do amazing work and have such a positive impact.
That's the deal.
Oh, it's moving how many people have been affected by this and how everyone else here is doing such amazing work.
Thank
Okay.
you so much, Majestic
My time's
Moose.
up.
Just,
I'm going to get
just
back
simply
to work.
for the name, Majestic Moose.
Yeah.
But then for your amazing donation, thank you.
So since we're live on YouTube right now, do you watch